The past few years have been plagued with extensive, evasive, and disheartening leadership failure. And I feel like we have been in this turmoil for way too long by now. And with the challenges post COVID-19 and the racial equity tensions that are impacting our society, there has never been a more important time to foster value-based leadership to organizations and community. Our standout guest today, Leigh Naturkach, is the executive director of the Mosaic Institute. And during our conversation, she's going to share how she leveraged value-based leadership as the motivation to lead forward towards her desired vision. So please help me welcome Leigh to the Standout podcast.
Hello, so great to be here and spend time with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time, to chit-chat a little bit with us about leadership, what it looks like, and most importantly, what was your journey to becoming the leader you were meant to be. Let me ask you this question. If you would describe yourself using 3 words, what would that be?
Ooh, just 3. I would say passionate. I would say I'm a very passionate person. I'm, I think, an empathetic person, and I'm a bit of a messy person. I'm very, vulnerable, messy in all my ways and approaches. So your no BS approach really resonated with me.
Messy is good. Let me tell you, people, messy is good, right? So when looking at your profile, we can clearly see that you have build a career devoting yourself to helping others and to supporting causes that are close to your heart. You have worked at the Canadian Women's Foundation, the Women's College Hospital Foundation, and in between you have done a lot of also volunteering and in different space, right? So with a focus on gender equity, reproductive justice, at-risk youth, and end-of-life right and care spaces. So it's quite broad. So what I see here, okay, she's generous, really, she has a big heart and she want to help. But tell us your why. Why did you decide to do all of this and, to focus on so many causes and to dedicate your career to doing so?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think I've always wanted to ask myself, how can I contribute to something? So, growing up in a small town, playing part of teams, part of the community, different pieces is what can I contribute in a positive way that's going to make the world a better place? And, some of those things, it can look very different. And I've never really been motivated by money or title or different pieces of that. I think I look at the challenges in the world and I just want to be part of the approaches and solutions. And I think it comes from a strong sense of those values that are important to me through empathy, justice, accountability. Just starting from a good place and from the people who informed my journey and who've been around me my whole life. I've been very inspired by how they've given back, and that's a strong motivator to influence how you make your decisions.
Did you have a role model growing up?
Oh, so many. Leadership and role models come in all shapes and forms, including within my own family. Very strong, wonderful women, and the men in my life have been very, very lucky. My friends, my community, throughout my academic career, teams, all of those different ways, and how that role modeling happens for me. I can't even count the ways that I've been influenced by that.
Is there, as you said, you growing up and all the values that you carry was important for you, to contribute and to make an impact. But do you think that it is related to an experience that you had growing up, or maybe, learning something in school that when you realize, oh, you know what? This is my calling. When did you realize, basically, if I can summarize my question, when did you realize that, or when did you have an aha moment when okay, you know what, this is what I want to do with my life?
That's such a fascinating piece. I think I've had multiple aha moments, and they've come in various sizes and shapes, but I don't think there was ever, as I said, I'm a messy person a little bit. And how that translates for me in this way is that I have a generalist approach. I'm not interested in any one particular thing or area, and the blend with which all of these experiences and curiosities that I've accumulated over time have informed sort of where I am today. And I can't say that there was a clear path or this moment. I think there were sparks that sort of just planted the seeds to what I'm continuing to grow and nurture. And even 5 years from now, who knows where I'll be in 5 years from now. But I think that sense of curiosity has really informed that. And I would say, one of the challenges I hear a lot from the young people in our programs or youth that I work with, they feel like that has to be a direct, clear path. And, I started out thinking, I was really interested in media, journalism, documentary, and also had this strong sense of justice. And I needed to sort of explore the both, which they have ended up melding together beautifully. But they do complement each other. You don't have to choose. You can explore one, and it can lead you down a different path, so that pressure to feel like you have to have it figured out early on, that's never something I've subscribed to, and I encourage others to really think about, because it's a accumulated journey. It's part of the process.
And I like you saying, there is no clear path, because this is a misconception that oftentimes we have, and that I did have myself, right? When I thought, okay, you go to university, this is what you study, this is what you build your career on in. And then, shifting from an industry to another was very challenging for me, because I would associate, the shift to failure. Or I'm shifting because I wasn't good enough at that. Or I'm shifting because I made a mistake. This is not what I was meant to, the person, or what I was meant to do, meant to be. I'm shifting because I don't know what I want. And I remember feeling lost. And sometimes it still happens, right? When I want to take a different direction, the self-doubt. Why do I want to take that direction? I shouldn't do it. It doesn't make sense. From a practical perspective, it doesn't make sense. But if I want to follow my heart, that's what I want to do. And it's really hard, to find the balance. And there is this consistent internal conflict. So we have it when we are young, like through, the university, college, or educational process. But then we still have it when we are a leader, at least from my personal expertise. So I think it's very important that you are bringing this topic to the conversation. And I would like to learn more about, how did you feel when you or how can I say that? How do you feel when, or what do you do? What's your process, maybe your thought process, when you feel it's time for you to shift from a place to another, or for something to something else?
It's a great question. And I think trusting your gut is something I've learned a lot about, and following those things that fuel you and challenge you but give you joy. Like you grow in the challenging moments. But for me, starting in media, going into social justice areas and different pieces, and then later going into studying death and dying, all of those things have blended together. And it was just sort of testing things along the way. So adding to my education, and education comes in many formal and informal ways. And I think it's through networks, relationship building, volunteering, how we can contribute doesn't necessarily have to be a profession. We can contribute in many ways. So each of those shifts came at a different time for me to fuel different aspects of myself. And so it was just, I would just say it just sort of was an interest, and then I just dedicated and put some more effort and commitment to that. But I think that's been the blend is, I think we feel the need that you have to have a PhD in something, or you have to be so credentialed in all these ways. And especially the death and dying work that I had, engaged in over the last 10 years, it's really been on my terms. And that's been a really refreshing way to engage with the work and not feel like I have to have the most polished resume or the most expertise. I can engage with that work in a way that aligns with my values, but also is sort of a self-made journey in that sense. And that's alleviated a lot of the pressure when I haven't monetized it or forced it to be any one thing. And I think that's been a really beautiful way of going about it that I had never really thought about before. And I learned that only 10 years ago. We're still learning all the time. It's a lifelong thing, right?
Yes. But, I see a lot of self-awareness and self-confidence here.
Well, and that's what's interesting because I've been reading more about, when the topic of values-based leadership in different pieces. And one of the there's four principles that some of the practitioners talk about. And one of them is self-reflection, balance, true self-confidence, and genuine humility. And I'm not saying I embody those in perfect ways every day. Absolutely not. But I think that true self-confidence comes from a really solid foundation. And I can really, really point back to, I've had the luck and the privilege of having a really wonderful, supportive family that provided that, and that unconditional, radical acceptance that I think not everyone has the opportunity or privilege of having. So I think that kind of confidence and grounding has really helped that element in particular.
Mm-hmm. And as I was saying at the beginning, the past few years have been really a catastrophe. Let's call it what it is in terms of leadership, right? All of us, we have been through a lot, and we have seen the limit of what leadership means, the way we had always known it, at least for the most of us and for most organizations out there. Um, so, in that context, uh, how value-based leadership can make a difference? And before we get to that, what does it mean to be a value-based leader? So you have shared the four principles, but
Yeah.
beyond the four principles, how do you embody it? What does that mean?
Well, that's really interesting. I think there's many styles of leadership, and I think a lot of cultural dominance has been informed by what we have seen and demonstrated in leadership. And I think this is a time when there's new forms and recognition and value in that. So I think it's a really exciting time, coming back to, along with all the challenges, but I think we're really seeing what is rising above and sort of that values-based leadership. So I would say, values-based leadership, the examples of that are, authenticity. I'm just going to try to name some other pieces here, but humility, other focused. I would say, how all those things come together to blend is really reflecting on. It's a sort of that, again, also that self-reflexive piece of I have enough self-awareness to be other focused and in service of an organization. And what that looks like is, modeled on all of those values. I think that I've heard the blend of like servant leadership and values-based leadership. I'm not sure they're quite the same thing. But authenticity, transparency, all of those pieces. And I think all of those things come together to really come back to trust. And I think that we're hearing a lot of disruption in the sector on leadership, all these pieces. And I think that the word trust keeps coming back as this is one example of how you can earn that within a team or within an organization or community.
Yeah, trust has been broken in so many ways and so many levels that it does require, I think, some real shift, and the emergence of new leaders, or maybe some existing leaders need to become more visible. So we build trust in people, faith in people again. We build trust in the system again, because the past few years have been really a roller coaster. I think also when it comes to value-based leadership, it's important to be able to identify your values, what you stand for, in order to then being able to communicate and share those values with your teams, within your organization, as a pillar of the groundwork and the motivation behind teamwork. We mentioned that self-awareness and self-acceptance, self-awareness are some of the pillars of values-based leadership. And I do believe that brings us back to something that is essential, is I, myself, how can I make a meaningful impact? And a lot of people now are searching for ways, they are searching for themselves and for ways to make a meaningful impact, and they don't know how, right? Because we're not used to it. We were raised and taught by society for the longest time, oh, this is what a leaders look like. This is how a leader behave. This is what you should do. This is how, and this and that. And we are so used, to be receiving so many inputs from the society that we are no longer used, and we don't know most of the time how to listen our inner voice and understand and put words on what we want to achieve and what's the impact we were meant to be. That's why I often say, know, become the leaders to be, because most of the time we don't know, right? So
Exactly.
how did you identify the values that you wanted to stand by and that you wanted to communicate throughout your career with the different people you worked with?
Yeah, I think, going back to some of those original points of that strong sense of, justice, accountability, empathy, humility. Those were things that humility I've only learned over time. So let's be clear. It's not, these weren't the automatically inbred things, that we're born knowing. And the more experiences and challenges I've had and opportunities to grow and mistakes I've made certainly have really made me more humble by time. So I can only imagine how humble I'm going to be by 70 years old. But I think, all of those things have informed how we go about. And I've learned, the amazing women leaders and people who I've had the privilege of working with, when you stand in those values, it provides that framework and that guidance to make decisions and what stands with your gut. And you know what, values-based leadership is one approach. I think that it's not exclusive to other forms of leadership. And I think using good judgment and knowing when to enact those different styles and what works. I do think that sometimes, and it's an ongoing process. It's not like you have this, values are, you continue to refine them and also tie them into action. And I think that that's the most challenging part. Is it's not, you can have a set of principles which inform your values, and this is a way of being and thinking, but how to put those into action and and practice that every day. It's an ongoing work, and it's disruptive, and it's hard, and it's challenging, and we don't always live up to our own values. And I think to know the difference of it, when you learn those lessons of when you have not, when that's incongruent, things are inconsistent, how do you get back to that place? How do you offer yourself grace? And did you learn something from that? And I think that's something that I've also learned in others, to offer that same grace, because I think we are very hard on ourselves. And you were saying, like, we're now more talking about values within a work setting. Well, we've previously always talked about value. What is our value? And that was usually related to outcomes, deliverables, monetary value. And I think this shift is serving humanity really well, that we're getting back to this place of our value in terms of values and as people.
Yes. And so you are now the executive director of the Mosaic Institute. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with the Mosaic Institute?
Yeah, so I wear many, many hats. So my generalist approach I rely on all of the skill sets and all of the knowledge I've accumulated over the decades of working and in community. So Mosaic Institute is a national organization with a mission to dismantle prejudice. And we equip people with the tools and skills and knowledge in order to do that. And I think, to your point around, people feel overwhelmed by the challenges. Certainly, there are many. It's a complicated time. Things are rapidly changing, polarized, misinformation, all these large challenges that people are facing. And what we really want to do is, we can't solve for everything. We certainly know that, but we want to give people to feel empowered within their own sphere of influence with what they can do. So for me, knowing that I grew up in a very privileged position, I did not face a lot of barriers. I still am working on myself first and foremost. That foundation and that self-awareness and understanding my own identity, that's something we teach through our programs, for example, because by understanding yourself and your social location, you can then help understand others and appreciate that difference as opposed to see it as an othering. And then, how do we, inform people around how to, within their workplace, within their family, within, the systems around us, we give them the pathways and mechanisms for how to create change. And it can be, we think of it having to be, running for president or these large scale pieces. But what I really appreciate about the movement that we have built with Mosaic is that it's driven by community. It comes and can show up in many forms, from a micro conversation to a research paper to community dialogues, and coming back to that idea of just being able to communicate through difference and appreciate the other. And it sounds like a simple thing. It's challenging, but people aren't equipped with that knowledge and don't know how to do that. And I think it's something that we need more than ever.
That's very true. And how do you feel this role helps you fulfill your purpose?
Oh my gosh, I feel so lucky to be in this seat. I honestly started on Valentine's Day last year, so I've been in love ever since. And I think, it's allowed me to use my skill sets, but also that huge sense of challenge. And I don't have all the answers all the time. So what I do is I surround myself with an amazing team who help me grow every day and challenge me in wonderful ways. Their wisdom and their leadership are things I learn from every day. The youth in our programs, the community partners we work with, I feel that I get to, tap on all of my experience and skill sets while still growing. And I think, our mission is one of the most urgent issues of our time, alongside all of the other challenges, because prejudice is at the root of so many of our ills. So I think this is, it's the small but mighty nature of our organization. I really love being able to put my experience, expertise, and efforts into something that really deserves that growth and attention. And that's something I'm very much interested in making Mosaic successful. And in this way, it's us together who are doing that. And that's the pieces. I might hold the executive director title, but it's a team effort, and it comes to our values and through our culture and all of those things that we have that common understanding and language, and something we're building intentionally together.
And the Mosaic Institute is one of its kind across Canada, right? I don't know, I'm not aware of any other organizations. And just for you to know, in full transparency, when I moved to Canada 10 years ago, I was a fellow of the Mosaic Institute, and not knowing what to do, being new in a country by myself. I didn't speak English back in time, so it was very challenging for me. But I really loved the experience I had at the Mosaic Institute, because it allowed me to learn so much about Canadian diverse society, and what are the challenges. You talked about the communication challenges between people, and Canada is a diverse country, right? So there is like a set of challenges that are that belongs to our society as Canadians, but because of the beautiful diversity of people who make Canada this beautiful country. And so I have learned a lot, and that was really a step on towards becoming the leader that I am today, and toward learning about myself, about Canada, about the culture, about the people, so I could myself also better start in life, my life in Canada. So kudos to what you guys are doing, because this is great. I haven't asked you the question, but I was wondering if there is any specific challenges, barriers that you face when climbing the ladder and growing your career as a leader.
Oh, how much time do we have? It's and there are, I think, the accumulation. I remember saying to a former boss of mine, a friend, when I was like 24, and I said, I don't have any regrets. And I was so obnoxious about not having, not the understanding that I had made mistakes, or that, just not the wisdom to know, what's, when I had made a mistake. But I think those moments over time that where you step outside of your values, you did not stand in the way that you would have expected of yourself, or held yourself to account. I think acknowledging those mistakes is one of the most important things you can do. It's actually helped. That's where the growth is. And, over my career, it's usually related to either issues of communication or relationships. It's how you make people feel. I think, we can all make mistakes technically, but I think the things that sit with me, and that I reflect on and try to do better, is the more humane elements of what we're talking about, into how we're walking around the world, our credibility, our who we are as human beings, and where I've caused harm, or if I've made a mistake. So it's a necessary part, and what we do with that is the most important thing. So are we going to grow from that? Can we repair? How do we make right, if we can? But if not, at least do better. And I think that as challenging and as annoying it is to wake up at 3 a.m. and stew on those mistakes and those things, you also have to move on and move forward. And I think being vulnerable about those things has been something I've been very grateful to the leaders around me, who have shared their experiences, who have been vulnerable about it, showed their vulnerable points, that show you we're all human beings, and we are trying to do our best. And while we have intention, what is the action that we're doing, most importantly, to tie to that? So it's one thing to talk about it, but to put into action is a challenge. So, I've certainly learned what not to do over the years, as much as I have learned what to do.
and I think what's important to remember here, for those of you watching and for those of you listening, is that perfect doesn't make it best. Right. And I know a lot of people hold themselves back because they feel they're not ready enough, prepared enough, it's not perfect enough, and so on and so on. But it doesn't make it better, right? Because you will make mistakes and you have to. Let me tell you that you have to make mistakes in order to learn and get better at what you do. If you don't make mistake, you don't learn. If you don't learn, you don't improve yourself. All right. And it's important to have those conversations because we need to reframe the narrative where, oh, you have to be good at it and you have to be successful and you have to get that job in order to that title in order to be a leader. No, you don't have to figure it out. You won't figure it all out. We that's a conversation Leith and I we were having at the beginning. We are still trying to figure it out on a daily basis. Okay, so it does happen. It's a process, right? There is no end to it. You keep learning, you keep making mistakes, and you keep improving. But the difference with us now, when you see us publicly and holding those titles and roles, is that we have learned that making mistakes is okay, and we have learned to bounce back from our mistake in order to keep moving forward. I would say that's the main difference between the people you see growing into leadership and becoming the leaders they were meant to be versus the people who are still holding themselves back. We go through the same process. It's just that we learn how to maneuver, how to play the game and leverage that process to our advantage. In order to reach that point, you need to go through all the mistakes, ups and downs, the
You
good,
have
the
to
bad,
earn
and
it.
the ugly, everything in between to reach that level. So
Yeah.
if you have big ambitions, if you know that you can do more, that you can achieve more, just do it. Give it a try.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's a process and it's continual. And I think what we see often on LinkedIn and in these different platforms of what appears to be, we're not seeing. It's like an iceberg. You're not seeing what all the stuff that's underneath or behind the scenes. And I think that's something I've learned the most about. And one of the most powerful things I've ever heard from really good leaders is when they genuinely can say, "I don't know. I'm not pretending to know, and we're going to figure it out." And actually, that's the trust. It comes back to judgment and all the informed ways and approaches that we do that can help get us to those answers. But that's the thing, is we're all figuring it out, and whether somebody admits that or not, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's another story. That could be another topic for another conversation. And so the last question here, what legacy would you like to build and leave behind?
Oh, that's so interesting. You know what? I think it does come back to values. There was a really good quote I heard from someone once that said, we're making maps, not monuments. And so that's not my quote, but that idea of I have been part of something that's larger than myself, and I have made people feel good in some way, feel loved. And I think that the death and dying studies, I'll go back to that. What it has taught me to say, how have you loved? And that's the legacy. I want to leave a little bit of love behind. That's all we can do.
Oh, wow, that's powerful. So this is already the end. Thank you so much for sharing so much about you, your journey, and being willing to share, uh, the reality of what's happening behind the beautiful facade, because there is a lot happening, a lot of learning. And again, learning is a good thing. So ultimately, making mistakes is a good thing. I think that's something that I would like all of us to keep in mind and to remember. Thank you for those of you tuning in live. And I will see you next week for another live episode of Stand Out from the Crowd. You take care, you stay safe. Leith, is there any last word you would like to share with us before we conclude?
No, I just want to say thank you, and the community that you've built here. It's something we need. We need this energy. We need that co-conspirator support of each other. And I think when you can see that is out there, it's a really positive thing. It helps all of us manage in the day-to-day challenges and find that's what sustains us. So thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you so much. You take care, you stay safe, and I will see you soon. Bye bye, everyone.